Good afternoon to our esteemed viewers. Welcome back to this week's another episode of the Community Show. This week we are going to be delving into real estate investment, an area that is at the moment there is high trend, and in particularly in real estate. So joining me to discuss this particular interesting topic, I am joined by a panel of distinguished gentlemen who are professionals in this field and have high levels of intellectualism in this particular debate and this particular context. So briefly, I'm going to introduce them and I'll give them the microphone to maybe tell us what I've left out. I'm going to begin with Council Atu from Mbara. Thank you very much for joining us, Council. We'll have you on this show. Right next to Council Modern, we are by Mr. Matovu Rogers. Mr. Matovu Rogers He's a lecturer at Makerere University Business School, facilitating on real estate, but also he holds a bachelor's in real estate, but also a master's of infrastructure management. He also works with a company called Planet Estates Limited. But briefly, I'm going to get to the panelists to briefly maybe say a word or say hello to the viewers, and then we'll begin the conversation. I'll begin with you, Council Morgan. Kindly unmute, turn on your camera, and say hello to the viewers. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, viewers. I'm delighted to talk to you on this community show, and hope you will gain from what we are going to discuss about real estate investment. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Modern. We're very happy and privileged to have you on tonight's conversation. Let's have Mr. Rogers kindly unmute and introduce yourself and say hi to our esteemed viewers.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed viewers, I am glad to be here. I'm glad to be with all of you on this show, and I look forward to a good discussion with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm just going to start with you, Mr. Rogers. You hold a bachelor's in real estate management, but also a master's in public infrastructure management. So let us begin the conversation with you right there. Maybe for the viewers, to put context to tonight's conversation as you unmute and turn on your camera, kindly contextualize for us tonight's conversation in a layman's term, that when the people or the audience out there are watching would get to understand what real estate is and what real estate investment is before we go into detailing discussing tonight's topic. Mr. Rogers?
Okay, maybe to just take it as you have said, in a layman's understanding, when we talk about investment, we are looking at an avenue where you are able to put your money and then get returns. Predominantly that. Investment, I put my money there, I expect my money to give me returns from wherever I've put it. And then when we talk about real estate, the definition can be very wide, but to a lay person, we are talking about land, we are talking about houses. And as far as the Ugandan context is concerned, I would narrow it down to those two major aspects, without going into property rights, without going into tangible, intangible, but I would just say we are looking at houses, we are looking at land as real property. So that's how I can define it for a lay person. So we want to discuss that how best do I invest my money in real properties such as land or houses, and how do I best get returns from the above? Briefly that. Thank you.
Then after thank you for giving us that wonderful, brief but very concise explanation to what real estate is and what real estate investment is. Now, I want us to go now take the trend of understanding the market trends and forecasting this tonight's conversation. So my line of questioning is particularly on two fronts, but let us start with the first question. So after you've given us the context to tonight's conversation, what are the current trends in real estate market and how do they impact investment decision? You earlier on mentioned in Uganda, it's about land. And so put for us the current trends in real estate market and how they impact investment decisions.
Maybe Douglas, still to seek for more clarity from you, should we stay as basic as possible, or we can go a little bit complicated.
I would advise that you can try as much as you can to make the conversation lay as possible, but where it's impossible, kindly use the jargons you use in real estate.
Okay. So when you ask me about trends, I would begin the conversation from a study of demographics. And in demographics, I want us to look at the population, how the population is growing, what age brackets do we have, what are their interests, where do they want to go, where is the city moving towards. Understanding those things helps a real estate investor to make the right decisions. Because if you realize the Ugandan real estate trend is driven that way, we need to know that our population is growing this fast. We need to know that we have many youth. We need to know that they are interested in this type of housing. We need to know that they have such incomes. We need to know that this is what they can afford. We need to understand how our infrastructure is moving. We need to understand where the government is putting priorities. Now, that is how the trend is driven. As long as you understand all or most of the things that I have talked about, or even if you choose one or two, it makes your investment easier. I can give an example. Probably to get more elaborate information about my example, I'll direct our viewers to a paper in the Daily Monitor. You can just go to Google, put in New Cities and Real Estate by Rogers Matovu, where I try to explain how the declaration by the government of Uganda announcing new cities drove the trend of real estate. That as Fort Portal is given a city status, and as we know that Fort Portal is a tourism city, how does that impact you, a real estate investor? Such that you can run to Fort Portal, buy land, build lodges, build guest houses, build safaris, because it has got a city status. So the trend is driven that way. When you know that we have a big population of youth who work near the city, okay, who do not want to commute for long distances, it gives you an understanding that they will need accommodation closer to the city. But when you study their incomes, it helps you to know, okay, despite the fact that they need accommodation to closer to the city, they can only afford, let's say, a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom of this price, okay? Also, if you understand that we are having a growing middle class, where we have a good number of people who have gotten some kind of good jobs, they can afford a basic lifestyle. You realize that cars are increasing in Uganda. And if you go to areas like Chanja, Chisasi, Nigeria, you'll see the kind of people living in that area, kind of middle class. They can afford a car. They have a family, 2-3 children. They get a good salary, let's say 1.5, 2 million or 3 million. So you know, okay, these are the people we have in this area. What can they afford? What do they want? Okay, they want good apartments. They can afford between 600 to 800,000. Okay, they want to live in an area which is good. So you go to Chanja, Chisasi, Nigeria, and the surrounding areas to make such an investment. But you might not be able to go to an area like in Zambia, Bwaise, Chisenyi, and put such an apartment. Why? The demographics in that area cannot afford that. I don't know if I can just keep it at that, but the trend is driven by our demographic growth and the status of our population.
Thank you very much. That has been very, very simple and very straightforward. You said the current trend is majorly controlled by the demographic growth and the status of our population, which is very true. From your submission, it makes it very simple. You know that if you have a young population, what kind of housing are they into, which informs the decisions of the real estate investors. And then you also talk about the status, how much they earn. But I'll come back to the conversation of the unemployment and how that affects the real estate business as well, because we know the demographics, as I've mentioned, majorly or many young people in this country do not have or earn minimum of averagely of 500,000 Ugandan shillings, which very, very low in terms of renting and in terms of getting those houses. But I shall get to that later on. But let me bring in Council Modern. Council Modern, what I'm interested with you is for us to discuss the legal and regulatory considerations. So as I heard from Mr. Rogers Matovu, he gives us the current market trends. But let us take the conversation to the legal framework. So what are some important legal and regulatory factors that real estate investors should be aware of before making an investment?
Yes, thank you very much for that question, Mr. Drake. The regulatory framework that we can take before, or that we can look at before investing in real estate, I will consider the first one as our land law, which is our constitution of Uganda, that gives every Ugandan a right to own property, to own land. Then from there, we can take it to land acts that give us different tenures that we have in Uganda, that is customary, freehold, and milo land. Then we also have other different regulatory frameworks that help someone to invest in land. For example, you cannot go into land business or real estate when you are not conversant with the NEMA Act that controls our swamps. That is also a law that helps us to know where you're going to invest your money. And also, you have to look at the Forestry Act, knowing that this where I'm going to put my money, as Mr. Rogers indicated, the demographic of the area. Yes, is this area in the forestry reserve? Is this the forest? Am I supposed to buy this kind of land? So you need to look at the Forestry Act and its regulations made under there. Then you also need to look at the UNRA Act that establishes the UNRA, that is Uganda National Roads Authority. You also need to look at, is this land that I'm going to buy, where I'm going to put my money, is it under UNRA reserve? If I buy this kind of land that is in UNRA reserve, what are the implications? So you have to look at it. And they also have some regulations that are made there that someone need to follow to know where to invest his or her money in real estate.
Council Modern, we are losing you.
Hello?
Yes. You go back on.
You asked me about the regulatory framework, and I've mentioned about the law that governs the real estate investment. When you're going to invest your money in land, I talked about the constitution for the purposes of our viewers to understand, which is the supreme law of land, that is Uganda, and it gives each Ugandan a right to own property. It also establishes that a newer system that we have in Uganda, that is freehold, customary, and also milo. I also talked about the Forestry Act. That one helps you to understand the area where you're going to invest your money. Is it under the forestry reserve? Is it under the... then I also talked about the NEMA Act. What does the NEMA Act talk about? Certain type of land. If I want to occupy this land, is it under NEMA? I also talked about maybe the UNRA Act.
Yes.
Yes, the UNRA Act, the act that establishes the Uganda National Roads Authority. If I want to buy this kind of land, is it under UNRA? Is it under what? If I find, which distance should I be if I'm going to buy certain land along the way? Then there is also Physical Planning Act that you need to look at. If I'm buying land, for example, if I'm buying land in Barara, what is the physical planning of the city talking about this and this area? So do I need to invest my money in a place where I want to For example, I want to do a hotel, and according to the physical plan of that area, there is, so how can I work? So those are some of the laws that regulate real estate investment.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. That has been quite elaborate. You highlight for us a number of laws that regulate real estate investment. We shall come back to those laws and enter into the nitty-gritties of in each of them, talking about land on. We shall talk about. We shall coming back. We shall talk about property title and ownership, land use regulations, and zoning laws into detail. But for now, you've just given us a very detailed intro and a detailed number of laws that are there in this country. I'd like to get back to you, Mr. Matovu Rogers. Earlier on, I asked you a question to discuss for us the current trends in real estate market and how they impact investment decisions. You mentioned demographic growth, and then you talked about the status of the population. But I'm still going to ask you in line of market trends and forecasting. Mr. Matovu, as you unmute and turn on your camera, earlier on, I said we shall delve into the question of how the unemployment affects people, or how the current state of our economic situation affects real estate investment. So my question to you therefore is, how do you analyze market data to forecast future opportunities and potential risks in real estate investment? Matovu Rogers?
Yes. To answer your question, Douglas, I can tell you that Uganda is predominantly facing a problem of lack of data. Thoroughly researched data doesn't exist. We have a company called Knight Frank. If you know about it, they have tried to put together a few things, but it's like they are the only ones. You go to Google, you will not find really serious market data about Uganda, especially in real estate. We don't have a price index. Our government values are hidden. I have a friend of mine who was recently doing research on real estate valuation to know the values of properties around Kampala. Gathering that data was a whole mountain. So I can answer you from that point that it is hard to analyze what doesn't exist. Of course, cognizant of the fact that we are still a young and growing population, a poor economy. We are just starting, just celebrating, let's say about 60 something years. So we are really, really behind on data. But that doesn't stop us from, using whatever small is available to try and, forecast and know how business is ending. I can give you an example of statistics by Bank of Uganda, especially as far as the loan portfolio is concerned, to know that how much of the entire loan portfolio within the country for a given year has gone into real estate. So they'll tell you that banks have given out, let's say, about 200 trillion within the last year to real estate investors. So that can give you a picture that, okay, we have had such a huge investment in real estate. You could try to, there's some little data concerning purchases that, okay, we've had such and such number of people purchase real estate within the year. There's some little data also on construction, benchmarking on hardwares and, all those industries dealing in construction material, to know that, okay, the construction industry has contributed this much to the economy within this year. All that just gives us very, very tiny glimpses, tiny inferences to show us a small glimmer of light, but it's not, clear statistical data that you can base on to make a very informed decision. Unfortunately, we don't have that one here. We can only bank on a few, like, we have some data on unemployment. So, people are not employed. Therefore, if I invest, I'll have a small market. You base on that to make a decision. Such small data are what we have.
Thank you. It's very unfortunate then that the lack of data is something that is affecting the growth of our real estate industry. However, allow me engage with you, Mr. Haire. Irrespective of the lack of data that we're experiencing at the moment, earlier on, you highlighted a number of laws that are available in this country. You talked about the land law. You started with the Constitution, which is the supreme law. You mentioned the Land Act, then you talked about the RTA, you talked about the NEMA Act, you talked about the Forestry Act, and then the Uganda Act. At this point in time, in your submission, you talked about the Constitution that talks about the right to own property, either individually or in association with others. Now, my question to you is in line of property title and ownership. You understand real estate is about you have to own it, you have to own a title, you have to, own this particular land. So I wanted to, into detail, discuss for us the property title and ownership in line of real estate investment.
Yes, thank you very much. As I earlier talked about what you have highlighted, what our constitution talks about, it gives ownership to individuals or in association with others. So that means that every Ugandan has a right to own property in any place he or she feels like buying that land, unless that land is regulated by the certain laws. As I earlier highlighted, that you can find the land is regulated by the forestry, regulated by NEMA, and regulated by the physical planning or UNRA, and other factors that can lead that land to be regulated. So if any Ugandan can own land or can own property, that means he has a right to have a title to that land. For example, if I can talk about that title, it acts as the conclusive evidence of ownership to that person. However, much in most scenarios that we have in Uganda, most people buy land using the agreement of the chairman. They even take the banks when they are going to get the loans. Few individuals, okay, I'm not well certain with statistics, but I know few individuals have land titles that maybe can be acquired. But to by at large, to get that ownership that we are talking about,
Yes, we are.
Also, sorry about that. So I'm talking about that. One having a right to own property, you can have that property as an individual or in association with others, as earlier talked about. Then, if you want to, 3 types of tenures that we have in Uganda. One, we have customary land ownership, that is the customary land ownership. You can have a customary certificate of title, and you apply to have that in lands registry to have that title, and it can have. Then we also have the freehold title or freehold tenure. You apply to the land and you get a freehold title. Then we have Milo, that Milo specifically originated from the 1900 Uganda agreement and order in council, where land in Uganda was divided into two parts. That is the Crown land and also Milo land. And especially with Milo land, is the people are in Uganda that have that title, and they are still paying what we call obsuru to the Kabaka of Uganda. Yes, Drake, I think I've exhausted what you asked me about the ownership of land.
Thank you very much. thoroughly exhausted the question that I asked you. That has been very exhaustive. Thank you. Allow me to get back to Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, you talked about, when you started this conversation, you highlight a number of significant issues. But now I want us to take the conversation to property types and investment strategies. You earlier on talked about the market trends, and the market trends you talk about as analyzing demographic growth and status of the population. But also highlight the issue of lack of data, which makes it very impossible when real estate investors want to invest in the business. Right now, I want you to tell us, or for the viewers out there who want to maybe get into real estate investment, what are the different types of property and the investment strategies? So I have two questions for you. What are the different types of real estate investments? And the second kind of question is, how do investment strategies differ across various property types? And what factors should investors consider when choosing a strategy? Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Douglas. I want our viewers to note one statement from what I'm about to say, and I'm going to begin with that only statement, is what works for Uganda. Because the real estate portfolio is very big. You can invest in a number of ways across, wide across the real estate spectrum. But the question is, what works for Uganda? The way this country is, the way we know it, the way things operate here. So if you are to invest in real estate, what kind of real estate works here? I'll give you an example of, investment in condominium developments. Sorry about that. Am I clear now?
Yes, you are. You're clear now.
So not that condominiums are a bad investment, but because as far as the Uganda population is concerned, our people have not yet fully understood what it is. Okay? People can decide to invest in skyscrapers here, what we call Class A office buildings. But you know that with the kind of businesses operating in the CBD, or even slightly outside the CBD, you might have your skyscraper empty. Case in point, some of the buildings in town have anything above 3rd floor close to empty. Okay? Why? It's because the way our people operate, they cannot effectively understand that kind of investment. So, as far as Uganda is concerned, what kind of real estate investment actually works? Number one is residential real estate for letting. Okay? That we have a growing middle class looking for a 2-bedroom, a 1-bedroom house to rent. Okay? So people that are investing in that kind of real estate are able to get a return on their investment. It is the opposite of residential real estate for sale. If any person is aware, one of the hardest things to sell in Uganda is a house. I'm not saying that it is impossible, but it is very hard. You put a house on market, let's say 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, put it on the market for, let's say, 300 million, 450 million. You might have to sell it for over a year or two. You will sell it. I'm not saying that you will never sell it. You will sell it. You can even sell it in a week, in a month. But I am just driving the point home that it is hard. Why? The Ugandan population has not yet understood or appreciated the idea of me walking somewhere, I buy a house. Moreover, at 400 million, most of the people in our population cannot afford that. Okay? Another kind of real estate investment that has worked, actually it is on top in Uganda, is investment in land. And this is land development, where we have companies like Canaan Sites, we have companies like, Zion, Planet Estates, SEMA, Royal. They have gone ahead to purchase raw land, develop it by, putting roads, bringing power closer, making land titles for people, and selling the land in small proportions known as plots of 50 by 100, 100 by 100, or whichever small dimensions that they may choose to make. Now, the Ugandan market has appreciated that, and an investment there will work. Why? Because you realize that the monies are within what Ugandans can afford, depending on the area, because you'll find such a plot in Nigeria at 100 million, in Chanja at 180, in Gayaza at 45, depending on the area and whoever can afford. You realize that such plots are easy to understand and people feel that they can afford them. That's why companies that are selling plots at 9 million, 8 million, 12 million, 5 million are having good returns. Why? That is what the Ugandans can afford. They can afford 5 million, they can afford 7 million, they can afford 10. Actually, such companies are even giving them the option of being able to pay in installments. So that kind of real estate also works. But we have very many others. People have invested, in condominiums. People have invested in warehousing real estate. People have invested in, in manufacturing real estate. People have invested in a lot of real estate that I can mention here. But what works for Uganda? I'll give you a country. Oh, I've forgotten. But there's a country where they had their industrial scaling grow up. It meant that people that invested in warehouses in such a country would make a kill, because people in the manufacturing industry, people that were importing in, needed space for warehousing. So whoever invested in warehousing would make a lot of money. But I think we all know how our manufacturing industry is doing here. Import and export. Of course, we have people importing in cars and some cargo here and there, but it's all at a very low scale. So meaning that if you went and invested massively in warehouses, you might have many of them look at you. Though there is also market there, but you as the investor, you need to make an assessment. Is it yet the time for Uganda to launch into warehousing real estate or manufacturing? People have invested in recreation real estate, and when I monitor, it is starting to pick up, because I think, I don't know, this is just a joke, but I think the Ugandans are stressed. They saw how many 400 Ugandans, whatever, are mentally ill, blah, blah, blah. I have realized that Ugandans have picked up the idea of having fun, either because of too much stress or that is who we are, but Ugandans like to have fun. So people that have invested in guest houses, lodges, and such a spectrum of people going there to have fun and happen. You have some recreational center somewhere, you've built some lounge somewhere. Of course, now you would have to sell beer, blah, blah. But if you've put up a place that can, be able to take a cafe, to take a small restaurant, to take a small bar, you will get clients, okay? But that is still in letting, but, coupled together with recreation. There are people who are investing in commercial space downtown, malls, arcades, plazas. They are also, getting clients, because we have very many people doing business down. That's why you see a man will replace a building where Pioneer Mall was, with how huge you see it is, and it will get full. Because now Ugandans have understood that they need a space to do business. Rest in peace, Aponye. But we saw what he did at Mega Standard, where we had people along the street, and then he chased them and he put, more organized kind of, small buildings. The man is dead, but the things were filled in like 1 week. So such kind of real estate also works. I mean, a town, people need to rent to do boutiques, mobile money, selling phones, selling electronics. People are looking for such space, as long as it is strategically located. Hope I've not confused you, but those are the pockets that could work for our country. Thank you.
Definitely. You haven't confused us, and it has been clear. Your first question that you asked, or a rhetoric that you posed, what works for Uganda. Went ahead and gave us examples or types of real estate investment that works. We talked about residential real estate. We talked about land development. We talked about entertainment, there you talk about lodges, bars, lounge, cafes, among others. Interesting, powerful submission. Thank you. Council Modern, you've been very quiet. I'd like to get to you. I want us to discuss land use regulations and zoning laws. You understand that zoning laws dictate how a property can be used, whether for residential, commercial, industrial, or mixed use purposes. So investors ought to be aware of these regulations to ensure that the intended use aligns with the zoning requirements. So Council Council Modern, my question to you therefore is, how do zoning laws and local regulations impact real estate development and investment decisions?
Yes, thank you very much, Drake. Maybe what I can, the impact of these laws to the investors that we have with real estate, as Rogers has put it clear in his submission, because he said that when he asked about the current trend of the analysis of the market data, and he clearly stated that, you know, in Uganda we are lacking data in real estate investment. So the same to regulations that we have in Uganda, most of them have not been, you know, we have so many laws in Uganda, but how the impact of these laws that have been in place haven't been so much used by the investors. And you know what's funny with this business in real estate investment, most of the people who are coming up to this real estate investment, some of them have not studied, few have studied, few have the legal knowledge to these things, and others don't want to engage lawyers to help them maybe interpret and internalize some of the regulations and the laws that we have in Uganda. But these regulations, for example, I can let me use the example of the constitution. It's clear that the land belongs to the people of Uganda, so everyone has a right to own the property in and everywhere. So we have come to where the government wanted to have a compulsory acquisition. The Compulsory Acquisition Act, where the government wanted to compulsorily acquire land from the people even before compensating them. So you see, those are the regulations that that we have. But in this real estate investment and the regulations that we have in Uganda, the Land Act, if these people follow what the law,
then kindly unmute. You've muted yourself again. Yes.
Sorry about that. I was disrupted by some call on the phone I'm using. I'm saying the regulations that we have in Uganda, they are so good and very interesting in when you are reading about them, and if they are implemented the way they are, wouldn't be having maybe issues in real estate investment. But because our land laws are not being implemented by us and even our implementers, and even those people who are dealing real estate investment, that's why we are getting so many issues. We have so many land wrangles. We have in place. For example, most of the laws are very clear, and even we have got some court rulings about interpreting these regulations or the laws that we have in Uganda. But the issue or the challenge with investors we have in real estate, some of them don't try to follow this interpretation of the laws and the regulations that we have, and they end up buying certain land or investing their money in places where they're not supposed to invest in their money, and they end up getting challenges, and at the end they start blaming the government of Uganda. It is now the government, yet the laws are there and they are very clear about how to deal with land. For example, the Land Act, I think the land regulations of 2010 clearly states that when you're buying land, especially when you're buying a family land, you should get a consent of the spouse. But it is not stopping people from purchasing land, even when there is no spousal consent. Even people don't want to care about finding out if is this person married or that person not married. At the end, people have lost their money because of all those few challenges that investors don't follow or ask their lawyers or ask the people that are responsible in regulating our business. Yes, Drake, I'm back to you.
That has been elaborate as well, and I really appreciate. So let me get back to Mr. Matovu Rogers. Mr. Matovu Rogers, I want us to talk about risk assessment and mitigation. Understand in whichever business that people engage in, people need to know how they can minimally or mitigate risk to the lowest possible level that there is. So I have particularly two questions for you. One is, how do you assess the risks associated with real estate investments, and how can investors mitigate those risks? And question two is, what are some common mistakes investors make, and how can they avoid?
Thank you, Douglas. I wouldn't really want to answer that question academically, though it can predominantly be answered academically. So I really don't know what I should do for you. Maybe tell me.
I suggest you maybe give us the academic aspect and then relate it to reality.
Because, risk rotates on some of the following fronts. Business risk, we have default risk. You'll have things like inflation coming, which can pose a risk. But I really wanted to stay as basic as possible. In Uganda, one of the biggest, I'll give you 2 or 3 of the biggest risks involved with real estate. And number one is everything that Council Modern is talking about. Actually, most investors have lost their money because of that risk. The legal risk. You buy air, you buy land which has been sold twice. You buy out of a forged land title. You buy out of a person that has misrepresented. You buy out of forgery. You buy family land sold to you without consent of other family members. He has spoken about spousal consent. You buy land that falls in a forest reserve. So that's the main risk, where if you mitigate it, do all your legal due diligence, you are 80% good to go. Now, when you finish that 80%, what you're remaining with is default risk. That, okay, there's a possibility that my tenants will not pay and they will run away with the money. There's a possibility that the person I sold to the land will pay half and not pay the other. There's a possibility that someone got a property from me and then they paid, and probably I realized that they are not able to complete the balance. It's also that kind of risk. But when we go into inflation, we'll have to go, into, calculating the value for money, inflation rates, to know if I put in 100 million and I recover 110 after 5 years, do I still have the same value or I've actually made a loss? Because that's another problem that investors fall in, that if you put in 100 million today, okay, 2023, and sell the property 140, let's say in the next 5 years, if you do serious calculation, you realize that 100 million in 2023 is the same as 140 million in 2029. Okay, though that's a lot of calculation to make. So with the knowledge I have, those two are the main risks in investment in real estate here, without all the other calculations. Okay, business risks, inflation, time value of money, standard deviation, blah, blah, blah. Those two are key, because we can even go into time series analysis, which I don't think would be relevant for this kind of conversation. But let people be very careful legally. KCCA is breaking buildings every day. It was built in a road reserve, it was built in a swamp, it was built where it wasn't supposed to be built. So check all the laws and regulations, zoning surrounding the investment. And number two, secure yourself against default. Appraise your tenants, make sure they have jobs, make sure they earn an income. You can get what we call security deposit. Usually, if you secure yourself against those two, the rest you should be dealing with is time value of money, but you should be good to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rogers. That has been elaborate as well. Council Modern. We have been joined by Magomo Ali Hussein. Magomo, thank you for joining the conversation. However late you have joined, we're happy to have you. And I would get to you immediately after I have Council Modern come in. Council Modern, right now, the question I'm going to have for you is out of the legal sense, but definitely still in line with our laws. I wanted to talk about financing and funding options. What are the various financing options available to real estate investors, and how can they determine the most suitable one for that project?
Thank you very much for that question. However, still, I see it to be a legal question. The finance options that we have in Uganda, after assessing the market value, assessing what everything Mr. Rogers has talked about, the only option we have is banks, financial institutions. Most people don't have capital per se, but there are banks that are willing to facilitate this investment. However much with the finance of these banks or commercial banks that we have in Uganda, or in circles, the microfinances we have got one risk, which I think Councillor has been talking about, has mentioned all the risks that are in this business. But let me talk about we have a challenge of financial literacy in Uganda or in this business. Banks have come up to give out people money, a lot of money to invest in this business. However, they have not come up to even train to train these people that have given their money. So at the end, people have got money from the bank, a lot of money from the bank, but the banks carries on all the risks of that people not paying back their money. They invest the money, they have not been educated very well. At the end, the bank end up losing the money. And still, it's the only option that we have in Uganda for financing real estate. Maybe we can also have an option of the family background. Some people come from good families, and the family have helped them or supported them. They have got the money, they have been educated, have educated their children or educated certain people. And after maybe education, they have been supported by their family. And maybe another financing thing that we have, maybe someone's capability. Maybe, for example, me, after my education, the little money that I get from my clients, I save that money. Then at the end, I start in a real estate investment. But as Rogers put it clear about the inflation rate, with the challenge of financing this investment. I get my money, save for 5 years. After saving for 5 years, I buy a plot of land, thinking that maybe I'm going to sell this land in 1 month, but I end up selling this land after 5 years. Maybe I make some company, I have bought the plot of land at 20 million. After 5 years, I've sold it at 30 million. But still, as Rogers said, the 20 million of today and the 30 million of the next 5 years is the same. So that is the challenge in this, or the risk in this real estate. Maybe to conclude on that, for the purposes of our viewers, understand the options that we have in financing real estate. I've talked about banks, commercial banks. I've talked about microfinances. I've talked about circles, individual capacities, also, and family background. Because in Uganda, I haven't seen any. I haven't seen government coming up to support certain people in real estate investment, unless they have come to support those people who are going to do industrial innovation, but not in real estate business. So we have banks, circles, individual capacity, individual capabilities, and also family background. Yes, Greg, back to you.
Thank you very much. That has been elaborate with all those funding options that you've provided, which then brings me to ask Mr. Matovu Rogers, sustainable and green real estate. We cannot have tonight's conversation without talking about sustainable development, sustainable and green estate. We understand the conversation around climate change is quite something that is making rounds around the globe, even here, inclusive of Uganda. So we cannot have tonight's conversation and forget talking about sustainable development. So my question to you is, how can real estate investors incorporate sustainable practices into their projects, and what are the potential benefits? And then two, are there any green certifications or programs that investors should consider when developing environmentally friendly properties? Mr. Rogers?
Eco-friendly structures, eco-friendly, architecture, designing eco-friendly construction materials, minimizing lighting, underground water harvesting. The debate is very big, and the truth is that that's where we want the world to go. But just repeat for me your question again, such that I just answer the question and not, go into much.
The question is, how can real estate investors incorporate sustainable practices in their projects, and what are the potential benefits? And two, are there any green certifications or programs that investors should consider when developing environmentally friendly properties?
Okay, the main key thing that we are advising investors these days is to reduce the carbon footprint or the carbon emissions by real estate as much as possible. Research by the World Bank indicates that real estate contributes up to 30% of the world's carbon emission, which means that as the real estate industry, we are doing a lot of harm to the environment. So to answer your question on sustainable ways of development, we are now urging investors on reduction heading towards usage, that let us reduce this as much as possible, and then let us try to use this, okay, in our structures. For example, if we talk about, heating, cooling, and ventilation, what we call HVC, heating, ventilation, and cooling, you're going to realize that very many buildings, elevators, okay, emit a lot of carbon. If you look at the lights that we use, okay, that's why we are encouraging buildings to use as much solar energy as possible. When we look at air conditioning, the air conditioners use a lot of energy and also emit a lot of carbon. We are saying, no, we don't have to use a lot of, air conditioning. We can just increase our natural air into the buildings. Let us do glass, let us do wide windows, let us do natural lighting to reduce on the amount of, energy that we use with our lighting, because you will enter a building and it's all lit using hydroelectric power. When power goes off, the entire thing goes dark. But are we able to switch off the power but still have our building have enough light? Okay, so we are urging people to reduce usage of certain things. All right, when we work at, when we talk about recycling the water that we use, okay, when we talk about the type of roofing that we use, recently, okay, not recently, but long ago, we were able to completely ban the use of asbestos because of its harm to the human beings and human health, okay? And we are urging people to use tiles, okay? These roofing tiles, because they are made out of clay, and clay is natural. So people can go as natural as possible, all right? Can we stop cutting down the trees that we use to roof? What else can we use in our roofing? And such kind of real estate can help us. Sorry, a bit, someone tried to distract me. So the discussion there is still what I've been saying. What do we use? What shouldn't we use? You talked about, certification. I have not read or learned of any in Uganda yet, but I know abroad they are giving, there's what we call the carbon economy, where companies can earn from their environmentally friendly practices. I know some countries have started that, but I don't know about any certifications in Uganda yet. I'm not saying they are not there. I am just not conversant or aware of something like that yet.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Matovu Rogers. That has been quite elaborate, as you've been entirely in tonight's conversation. Mr. Magomo Ali Hussein, thank you for joining us. Mr. Magomo Ali Hussein is a real estate agent. So my line of question to you is just going to be simply on grounds of property management and maintenance. Considering your line of work, what are the key responsibilities of a property manager, and how can investors ensure that their properties are well maintained and profitable? Magomu Ali Hussein, kindly unmute, turn on your camera and answer that question. Thank you. Approaching the top of the hour of our conversation, so I'll get to you, Council Modern, as we try to wind up tonight's conversation. I just want you to take us out of Uganda. We're going to talk about international real estate investment. What are the opportunities and challenges of investing in real estate markets outside of one's home country? Considering your experience in law, definitely you would know the challenges that are related to land, possibly. So what are the opportunities and challenges of investing in real estate markets outside of one's home country? Council Modern?
Yes, thank you very much, Drake, for that question. You see, so now we are going to cross-border trade or cross-border business. Yes, it's true. Every country have different laws that govern their land. And for example, now you cannot go and invest the real estate in a Tanzania when in Tanzania land is owned by the government gives you the land to do when the land is communal. For example, you cannot go and invest in maybe in Kenya you can do a real estate investment. However much you have to bear in mind of the laws in that country. And still, most people have gone to other countries and have done real estate investment and have been successful because of the bilateral laws that we have in place. For example, the East African community, where they have accessed the free trade within East Africa. But however, there is also a challenge with the free trade and East Africa of different currencies. We are from Uganda, you have shillings. The value of the shilling in Uganda is not the value of the shilling in Kenya. You have the Sudanese pound. The value of the Sudanese pound is different. You go to Rwanda, the Mafalanga in Rwanda have a different value. So those are the challenges. I will use the East Africa as the example under that international level. We have different, when you find you have different values in place for an involving, that is the challenge. Recent, let me use an example outside the real estate. Recent, we have seen goods from Uganda being rejected by Kenyan. Some goods from Uganda being Africa community. So those are the challenges maybe that can also be found in real estate. But still in Uganda, in Uganda, business is open for everyone. Business is open for everyone. It is where, and even the president clearly stated it that even everyone can come and Uganda do business and become successful. But it is different. You not go to Rwanda and you do business and you be successful. Yes, you can be successful, but you will not repatriate those profits back to Uganda. There is a certain percentage that you will leave there, which is also different to the European countries. You cannot go to Europe and do business, then you repatriate all the profits back to Africa. That is a totally different. So that means when you're going to have invest in a certain country, you also take note of where you're going to put your profits. And still, if I can talk about real estate in Uganda, or in Africa, you see, as Rogers clearly stated it, you'll not do a condominium business in Uganda or in Africa, but condominium business in Europe is working very well. So we also need to know where and what you're going to invest in.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Magomo Ali Hussein, are you there now?
Actually, Mr. Ali is not listening to everything since the video, his mic is off. Can't even listen what we are talking about.
It's all right. So I guess we are almost reached to the top of the hour. So right now, I'll let us reach towards the end of the show, but I'll just have one final question for Mr. Rogers, then we can get to our parting shots. Mr. Rogers, I want us to talk about exit strategies and portfolio diversification. I understand when you enter into the real estate investment, definitely you'd have to know how best will you exit if at all things go haywire. So I have just one question for you. What are some effective exit strategies? And what are some effective exit strategies for real estate investments? And when should investors consider selling a property?
Okay, let me just lay background for our viewers and listeners. We have the following phases. Number one, we have acquisition, where you acquire the property. We have construction, maybe you're putting up something. And then we have use, it's under use, okay, there's something ongoing. We have management, okay, that ongoing management of the building, cleaning, slashing, maintenance, etc. And then we have disposal, okay, where your question comes in. So you acquire, construct, use, manage, or dispose. Now, when do you dispose? Because we can have disposal strategies but those ones are easy. But I feel the investor should be in position to know, when do I dispose? What is the right time to dispose? And now, on disposal, we have also three things that I can talk about. Number one, we have highest and best use, okay? Highest and best use. Now, under highest and best use, we also have, should I dispose of the property as it is? Okay. Number two, should I make changes to the property and dispose? Okay. Number three, should I eliminate the property and sell the land as vacant? All those things help you to know how to dispose of your property. You're going to realize that some properties could be more valuable with vacant land than a very dilapidated building. Actually, if you bring a buyer with a dilapidated building, they might give you less money. But when you remove the dilapidated building and sell land alone, you might get more money. Where did you lose me from?
The point of, if you have a dilapidated building, it's better selling off the land and yeah.
Okay. Now, recently, I had a friend of mine selling a car. Sorry, this is outside the conversation. And he was, I think someone had knocked the windscreen. Okay, this one on the side of the door. What do we call that one? Is it a mirror? Is it a door mirror? Something like that. I know you understand. It had been knocked and it had crashed inside. And he wanted to sell the car without replacing that mirror. But you realize that someone might give you less money because of that. Yet, if you replace the mirror with, let's say, about 50,000 or 100,000, you would get more money. That's why someone selling a car would want to first, let's say, fix the car, spray it a bit, and then get money. The same with you at the point of disposal. Can I first make this building better? Should I paint? Should I do some renovations? Make it look good, and then I can sell. Okay? I don't know if I am driving the point home. Now, after you are able to make all those decisions on how should I dispose of the property, then you should be able to assess the market trend. Okay? Let us go to people in Kololo, people in Nakasero. Let me use those two main examples. You built a structure meant for, let's say, a home in Nakasero 30 years ago. But right now, a home cannot work there because the city has grown and pushed into Nakasero. So you realize that if you were into that kind of business, it is better to dispose of as early as possible, or your building will have what we call functional obsolescence. My microphone is off.
Your microphone is on. Proceed. They're talking to Hussein. Proceed.
Okay. Your building will have what we call functional obsolescence. Like it cannot serve the function for which you intended it to serve. Okay. Then you realize that in the long run, technological obsolescence might also hit you. That the kind of technology buildings are using these days does not suit you. Now, let me just track back to your previous question about sustainable real estate, green buildings. You're going to realize that as we get more green, people will abandon certain buildings because they are not green. You get the point. So you need to know, okay, we are heading towards green. Should I dispose of, or I should make changes towards green? You get the point. So I don't know if that's fair enough, or I have to make a few adjustments in my presentation at that point.
No, it's fair. It's fair enough, and the point has been driven home. And thank you. Hussein, we're very sorry that we couldn't have the chance to hear from you tonight. Unfortunately, we have reached the top of the hour. So I'm just going to get to Council Modern, and you give us your concluding remarks. And yes, give us your concluding remarks, and we can have Mr. Matovu, and shall call it a day. Thank you. Council Modern.
Yes, thank you very much, Drake. Maybe my concluding remark would be in respect of advising people when they're entering real estate business and what few of the techniques that they need to know about land when they are buying land. So it can help them maybe not to go into land wrangles that is there and there. You know, we have got the challenges these days. Most of the criminal cases concerning murder were all is originating from land. Maybe if you understand these little basics, it will help you, it will help the community not to make mistakes. One, I will start with when you're going to buy land or going to invest in real estate business, you need to make search. You know, that is what we call due diligence in land. You should first inquire, does this land that I'm going to buy has a land title or it doesn't have a land title? The only way you can know about if it has a land title or not, you should call a surveyor. A surveyor, if you call someone to your land and surveys the place, will tell you that there is this and this title in this area. And when he tells you there is this title in this area, then you go to land and make search and you know who owns this land title. You will know, is there any encumbrance of that title or there is no encumbrance? No, this one is helping you to avoid buying land from fraudsters, buying land from maybe being sold to another person. That's what is going to help you. And with due diligence, you don't stop at making search and knowing if there is a land title or there is no land title. You need to go and visit the physical land and know where this land is found. Now these days, we have got social media. Everyone, I'm here in Iparala, I post my land. After posting my land, someone is to buy and trust me. I know that place. I want to buy land. He has not seen the land. Sends the money through the bank. We execute the agreement even before us. That person has never gone to visit that land physically. So that is the challenge. You should go and visit that land physically. Three, we search also. You need to know the boundaries of that land. After knowing the boundaries of the land, it will help you to establish who are your neighbors in that land. After finding out the neighbors, you need to, to lose 100 million or a lot of money, you better lose little money when you are finding out about the neighbors, or when you're finding out the neighbors around that land you are going to buy. Look for each individual, talk to them. Who owns that land? How did that person purchase that land? Their land title. So all those questions help you. Do you have any issue with the boundaries on that land? After doing that, then you also go and look for the chairman. Else you want to confirm that the land you are going to buy belongs to this real estate agent or belongs to this person. Then and confirms to you. No. After doing that, then now you need to check with physical planning. Is this land that I'm going to buy suitable for the business I'm going to do? If not, what should I do? Is this land? Then you go to forestry. Is this land in the forestry reserve? Is this land? You go to NEMA. Is this land in the NEMA? Does this land have access? So those are the questions that you need to ask yourself. Avoid wrangles with the neighbors and the person who's selling you that land tomorrow. So it is my humble appeal to the public, to the viewers, that when you're going to buy land, at least spend little money instead of losing a lot of money at the end and you go to court. These days you can even go to court for a land case. It takes you to 10 to 5 years. You have lost money. Your money is not working. You are even adding another money. You are wasting time. You better put or invest little money and understand the land you are going to purchase so that you can be saved to tomorrow. So that is my humble opinion to the public.
Thank you. Thank you very
Yes.
much. Before I get to Rogers, Ali Hussein, can you hear us? I would just like to give you a few minutes for you to make your case. Can you hear us? Wow, we have struggled and we cannot hear anything from you, Mr. Ali Hussein. I guess maybe your speakerphone doesn't allow you or doesn't remit sound. Apologies, but maybe we'll have you next time. Now, let me get closing remarks from Matovu Rogers. We are way into our time, but briefly come and give us your concluding remarks, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Douglas. I can only conclude by telling people to understand the country, know what works in Uganda, don't be driven by bandwagon effect, and you'll excel in our real estate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Rogers. I've really enjoyed tonight's conversation. It has been interesting. We apologize, Mr. Magomu Ali, for whatever happened. I guess the technical issues was beyond our control, but possibly we'll have you on the next conversation. But thank you very much, Mr. Atuhurire Modern, Mr. Matovu Rogers, and Magomu Ali, though unfortunate that you couldn't make your contributions tonight. Otherwise, I've been your host, Douglas Drekonen is my name. And tonight we were talking about real estate investment. Thank you very much to Civic Space TV and Center for Constitutional Governance for making this possible. And to the technical crew, we really appreciate you for the good work done. Otherwise, a good afternoon and have a good day. Take care. Cheers.